All right. All right, Arizona. So my name is Francine Engel, and I'm a judge from Maryland. I am a political scientist. I focus on American constitutional development, and I also work with the Maryland Council for Civic and History Education.
And hello, my name is Jocelyn Broman. I'm a We the People alumni from 2006 is when I competed at nationals, which feels like several lifetimes ago. I am also an attorney and also work on Capitol Hill for Representative Don Young of Alaska.
All right. My name is Evan Gessner. I'm a civil rights attorney in Lexington, South Carolina. This is my first year judging a national level competition, though I've judged the state competition here for probably about the last 12 or 13 years. Very excited to be here. Look forward to your presentation.
All right, and if you can introduce yourselves to us, please.
Hello, I am James Driscoll, and I'm also a two-time speech and debate national qualifier, and I'm also my school's high school graduation speaker. So,
excellent.
Hi, my name is Laura Castro, and I'm a member of the Mayor's Youth Committee.
Hi, my name is Tessa Jagoda, and along with We the People, I'm a team officer for my school's Model United Nations team. And our coaches are Miss Lindblom and Miss Litzenberger.
All right, so I will read the question for you. We have a quote from John Adams here. There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into two great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? You may begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to witness the most anticipated match in our nation's history. Standing at 6'2" and weighing 175 pounds, we have Democratic Republican Thomas Jefferson, aka the pen of the revolution. In the other corner, standing at 5'7", is Alexander Little Lion Hamilton.
in this monumental battle over economic ideology and constitutional interpretation, we witnessed the formation of key issues and organizational strategies that continue to be resurfaced, debated, and exploited well into the modern era. Now, let's get ready to rumble.
The founders warned against the rise of political parties, but Federalist 10 recognizes that factions are inevitable and sown into the nature of man. Prior to ratification, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists sparred over the power of the federal government. This match continued into the first and second parties.
The Federalists of the first party system supercharged the federal government under Article 1, Section 8's Necessary and Proper Clause to spearhead a strong national economy, forming the national bank, absorbing state debts, and enacting the whiskey tax.
In opposition, Jefferson's Democratic Republicans platformed under a strict construction of the Constitution, states' rights, and freedoms for the common man. Disagreements on the nature of the federal government and economic models persisted into the second party system, the Democrats and Whigs.
After inefficient party organization destabilized the election of 1824, Van Buren adopted the Democratic Party as a strategy to centralize party platforms, streamline two clearly identifiable candidates, and establish grassroots organizations.
And these issues have persisted. Georgetown professor James Reichley argues that American political parties have historically clashed between liberalism and conservatism. The original parties, Federalists and Democratic Republicans, were conservative and liberal respectively.
Interestingly, these clashes have persisted throughout history, manifesting into different parties as they realign. The Party of States' Rights and the Common Man realigned in 1800 under Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans, reaching a zenith under Jackson's Democratic presidency. In 1860, Lincoln and the Republicans consolidated support for civil rights, and in 1932, the Party of Economic Liberties realigned under FDR's New Deal Democrats.
Today, Democrats echo FDR's liberalism, relying on a strong federal government, economic regulations, and socioeconomic liberties. Similar to Jefferson's platform, modern Republicans favor states' rights, a small federal government, and minimal government interference in the economy.
The differences still persist, but have increased in extremity. A notable example is the difference between President Trump's 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act and President Biden's opposing corporate income tax, two differing economic models for two different parties on opposite sides of the ring.
While a divided government may appear to be a disadvantage, this isn't necessarily the case. Conflict can actually create compromise and collaboration between the legislative and executive, often adopting longer lasting support. For instance, the divided governments of 1981 and 86 required bipartisan support to pass the Reagan tax laws, one of the most influential tax reforms in American history. Economically, divided governments prosper with compromise. According to Forbes, inflation rates are generally lower in divided governments due to less government spending.
The biggest disadvantage of divided governments is gridlock. For example, the 2018-19 35-day shutdown over disputes about funding between Republican President Trump and the Democrat-controlled House.
In contrast, unified governments encourage tag team efficiency as an advantage. When both the executive and Congress are run by the same party, policy initiatives are realized. But as a disadvantage, a unified government can pass legislation unchecked by the minority party, decreasing the effect of checks and balances.
The modern political arena is getting rowdy. Although the violence we're facing is new, even our founders had to brawl it out. Jefferson, pen of the Revolution versus Alexander Little Lion Hamilton, a battle of the ages. But if the lessons of history have taught us anything, it's all the same arena, just different fighters.
All right. So, one of the things that you talked about, the benefits of divided government, is prospering, how we prosper with compromise. So divided government requires them to compromise. Some people have pointed out that today it seems like members of our political parties are not willing to compromise. Do you think that is true?
Well, I do think it's true. And I think the most recent example of this is the COVID-19 $1.9 trillion stimulus package that we just checked. Because between the time when Joe Biden was elected and he was inaugurated, we still had a divided government. And in that time, Democrats and Republicans had two opposing bills, one for $300 and one for a $1,400 stimulus check. And in that time, we had no collaboration until we had a unified government.
Additionally, we can see this lack of compromise. And if we take a look at the social aspect of it, after President Biden won in the 2020 election, we saw mass insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. And we can see that because of such of the division between Republicans and Democrats in our government, that this insurrection led to this violent demonstration of the Republican Party and therefore delegitimizing them and ultimately rendering the division even further.
How did factions fit into this January 6th insurrection?
Well, factions within the Republican Party where extreme loyalty to Donald Trump, President Donald Trump and his Republican Party, their extreme loyalty led to their effort to disenfranchise millions of voters and from a different ideology.
And this same sentiment is adopted from the 2009 Tea Party movement, which was a faction of the Republican Party. Because in 2009, they used many of the same tactics, petitioning at the US Capitol and petitioning at state capitals around the nation. And they had three demands: stop Obamacare, stop deficit spending, and stop economic benefits from the government. And so this is economic conservatism turned to social outrage. And it is a large faction in the Republican Party, especially noting Donald Trump and people like Ted Cruz.
And one example of the factions that my teammates have been referencing are the Proud Boys. And we saw that during the insurrection riots, Donald Trump explicitly went out and told them to stand back and stand by. And this faction is actually known for being inherently racist and advocating for white supremacy. So we can see that the issues that come along with that.
And how has factions affected the Democrat Party in dealing with the coronavirus bills that you've mentioned?
Well, the Democrats, many Democrats wanted to pack the stimulus check with things like a child allowance and a $15 minimum wage. However, that really shows that there is a difference between our more conservative Democrats and our more liberal Democrats. For instance, our state Senator Kyrsten Sinema voted no on the $15 minimum wage because she thought that the Senate didn't even have the power in the parliamentary procedures to advance that. And she even brought a cake to the Senate floor to celebrate that.
So is it really political parties controlling our system, or is it factions?
Well, according to George Washington, political parties serve to organize factions. So while factions are an issue, it all falls under the umbrella of the political parties and the polarity that we see in our current society between the Democrats and the Republicans. A Pew Research Center poll recorded that in the 2016 election, 56% of Republicans didn't vote for President Donald Trump, but against Hillary Clinton. And 43% of Democrats did not vote for Hillary Clinton, but against Donald Trump. So in that way, the political parties serve to foster the factions that appear between them.
I agree with Tessa, and also a big issue is the incorporation of special interest groups that influence our campaigns. With the 2010 Citizens United v. FEC decision, corporations are able to contribute millions of dollars to these issues, and they finance extreme politicians like oil and gas companies like the Koch brothers can influence politicians to say that climate change is not real.
Well, tell me, in a democratic system of government, are political parties inevitable? Could we have our government without any political party?
I would say no, because political parties have served to connect the people to their form of governance. And that was exactly what Martin Van Buren was trying to do when he established the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was a large platform for the common man to get engaged in voting, but political parties have throughout history extended that right to vote and political participation, such as the Republicans in the 15th Amendment or the Progressives in the 19th Amendment. So political parties have served to connect people to the government.
Additionally, they maintain a limited government. So we can see with the formation of the first political parties, the Democratic Republicans weren't actually initially an official political party. It was the mediatization of it that eventually turned it to become this second political party to balance out the Federalists' exertion of power in fear that they would be a unified government and that they would have the entirety of the power.
But also there are provisions in the Constitution that have almost formed the two-party system. For example, in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 and 3, it establishes that states can provide a winner-take-all system that most states have chosen to use. And this winner-take-all system makes it only possible for there to be a two-party system, and a third party is very unlikely to win.
So going off of that, how has party dominance at a state level for different states affected the federal government or the national politics?
Well, state governments often, like whatever party that the state government aligns with is often the party that they're going to send to the national government. And I think there's a really good international example to explain this. India actually has a multi-party system, which has decentralized power and given it to state factions. And so because we have more representation on a state level in India, that means whoever the Indian states elect to the national government most closely align with their coalitions.
So how do you think the founding fathers, if they would look at the political parties today and the loyalties that politicians have to their political parties, do you think they would be frustrated by this, or do you think that they would have seen this coming?
Well, I think we can take a look at George Washington's farewell address, and when she specifically cited that the formation of political parties would ultimately be the end of our nation. And so we can see that with George Washington's fear, the next election right after, political parties were formed. And so although the founders did fear the formation, we have to realize that in today's modern society, the formation of political parties is essential. We aren't the same as we were in 1804. We have adapted and modernized, and we are a more dynamic society that needs greater representation.
Congratulations. Let's recognize the students for their hard work and their participation today.
All right, I'm off mute, yes. Well, let me tell you, I love the way you started this off. You got my attention right away, and you kept my attention the whole time. So I can see why you're the speaker of the year and on this winner of the speech team and all the different things that you were telling me, and on the Model UN. You definitely know how to give a presentation. So I loved it. The other thing that I really liked is you did a really thorough discussion of the historical development of political parties. So you didn't just talk about Federalists versus anti-Federalists. You know, you went into Federalists and Democratic Republicans, and you brought up the Whig Party, and you even brought up Martin Van Buren in your follow-up questions. So I thought you did a nice job with the history of it. You had a lot of great examples that you gave throughout the presentation and in your follow-up, and I thought you did a really wonderful job during the follow-up with a lot of specific examples that were really on point. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the historical survey that you gave in your statement was helpful, and it really kind of shows that these are things that change over time, and how you're talking about conservatism versus liberalism and how that realigns with different parties over a period of time. It's a nuanced and very in-depth understanding of that, and I definitely appreciate it, because I mean, as you probably know, when you talk to anyone on the street, they're like, there's always been Democrats and Republicans, and they just happen to be there. And so that kind of nuanced understanding will serve you well as you consider like why representatives are the way they are. I also particularly liked your, I'm going to keep using it because it's very true, your nuanced discussion of divided government versus unified government, and that both have their advantages and both have their disadvantages. And I also really liked how you used tax policy to provide that example. That was a very good way of doing it, because talking about the 86 tax reform, and then also the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and just that kind of like concrete policy example to kind of define what you're doing was very well done. In our discussion about like factions and parties and all of that for follow-up, I'd have liked to see a little bit more nuance of what is a faction and what's a party. And also, I don't know if I would define the Proud Boys as a faction. So I think that there's like, it's a good example to sort of say that this is this group here that has that, but I don't know if that's a faction per se. Now, maybe I'm wrong, that could be true, but I think that that discussion could use a little bit more nuance and detail in regards to that. I particularly liked you bringing up your state senators as well. Like, Sienna, watching her walk on the Senate floor is always entertaining because you never know what she's wearing. So it's always exciting to hear you guys use your own state representatives and senators to like make your point. Also, Arizona has like just a very diverse congressional delegation, and so being able to see that and see how that's working is excellent. Yeah, lots of good examples, and so I just would really applaud you for an excellent discussion on this issue. So, and I hope you're getting a chance to think even more deeply about these issues in the future as you keep going on in your careers and all of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great job, everyone. You know, I realized going through this that, 4 minutes and then 8 minutes really isn't a whole lot of time to cover some of these topics, and y'all managed to pack a lot of information in a very short amount of time. As my colleagues have pointed out, y'all had a lot of really great examples. What I just want to touch on, y'all mentioned realignments, which I think is a real key issue to understand. Jocelyn mentioned just talking to someone on the street, they might not realize, because we only live so many years and we know, all right, Republicans do this, Democrats do this, but going back and realize how parties have aligned over the years. Also in our follow-up questions, drew on the Constitution itself and said, this is how, that kind of led to the two-party system. With that in there, you're not going to get multi-parties or parliamentarian. That's just not going to happen. So very well researched, very well thought out presentation. I can tell you put a lot of time in preparing. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job again.